breaking down everyday workplace issues and diagnosing the hidden sickness, not just the obvious symptom. Our hosts, James and Coby.
Did we lose a patient?
No, that's just my lunch.
Hey, thanks for joining us. I'm Coby, he's James, and let's get started with a question. What do I need to know to be an effective leader?
Just a small topic today. Um, this is really a huge topic that we'll try to do justice to in 45 minutes. But there are so many books, programs, speakers, whatever out there that are dedicated to helping people to become better leaders. So, in my less than humble opinion, the most important things that I think that I want you to understand is the difference between being a good leader and being a good manager. Um, you need to have a framework that you can rely on in order to make consistent and ethical decisions. You need to recognize, or it's okay to recognize that it's okay not to have the answer to every question immediately. And you really need to be able to recognize some of the and avoid some of the common pitfalls that we see, which we will obviously jump into and explain in more detail as we kind of dive into the conversation. But those I think are kind of the big topics, the big themes that I think if we can provide you with that information, it will help you become a better leader.
Yeah. And again, we are not leadership coaches. We are not leadership experts. We work with a number of them, and we're always in awe by them and their knowledge and their insights, everything like that. But because of the work that we do, kind of going in and providing organizational stability and improving scalability and that kind of stuff like that, leadership like development and leadership skills and management skills are things that are just interwoven into the work that we do. And we often, like when we step into like supporting leadership teams or taking over organizations temporarily, we end up providing a level of
Yeah.
mentorship and kind of like recommended training as the ongoing, like that as part of that ongoing stability piece, right? So this is something that we often talk about, and it's funny because like we have some, we don't bring it up a lot in the podcast. We usually talk more about the diagnostics and kind of the structural pieces, but this is something that again is always a big part of the everyday for us. So I like that we're able to kind of like carve out some time just to focus on this because, like I say, this is something that we kind of bring into the work that we do all the time, and so providing some practical tips and supports and advice to
Yeah.
help anyone that wants to just level up their game even a little bit, I think they're going to get a lot out of this episode.
Well, the heart and soul of what we do is helping organizations to develop really effective, engaging workplace cultures so that they can continue to grow and scale,
Yeah.
right? You can't do that if you don't have good leaders.
Right.
Leadership is essential to setting the stage, and not just in terms of vision casting,
Mhm.
but in how you present yourself, how you engage with your teams, how you, as a leader, you are a role model in many respects.
Yeah.
People are looking to you for leadership. They are
Mhm.
also looking to you for what is the proper way to behave, or the proper is the wrong term.
Right.
I think more what is acceptable behavior within this environment. If you have a leader who is very authoritarian
Mhm.
and very direct and very kind of short-tempered, that will filter through your entire organization. All right.
Yeah.
So the way that leaders are supported and developed have a significant impact on your organizational culture, and which also has a significant impact on your ability to continue to grow and scale, expand, and
Yeah.
do what your business is there to do.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that why leaders at the top, at the executive level, are so important to have the qualities of both a good manager and a good leader, which we'll get into in a minute. But why they're so important to the people at the front line, at the entry level, is because it is just a blatant fact that you lead how you are led.
Hmm.
And if, like you say, if the person at the very top, the CEO, the executive director, the managing partner, whatever, is secretive and manipulative and pits people against each other and micromanages, that's going to be how their direct reports end up managing their team. It's going to filter to them, the organization. And we have seen firsthand numerous times the impact of that person at the top, how it completely changes the culture when they go from one extreme to the other, or even just when they go from an extreme to the middle.
Yeah.
Just, the idea of, someone that maybe, is more empathetic or, or kind of listens more, provides, honestly, someone that provides psychological safety.
Hmm.
It does not take long. Like sometimes it's a matter of months. And that transparency and that willingness to kind of like, listen and speak up tends to ripple through the organization very effectively. And you see a massive cultural shift just by, again, who is running the show, or who's at least
Hmm.
layered up, because again, you lead how you're led.
Yeah, you said something that I want to highlight, that I didn't state in my intro, but honestly, if nothing else, if you take nothing else away, psychological safety. If
Mhm.
you want to be a better leader, a more effective leader, a leader who people look up to, who they will follow and who they will respect, being able to provide people with the psychological safety to share their opinions, speak up, challenge decisions in a respectful manner. It's game changing
Mhm.
because it is empowering. It allows people to play to their strengths. It fosters a sense of camaraderie and acceptance. Psychological safety is paramount in leadership.
Mhm.
And it's honestly an oversight that I didn't state it in the intro because it is foundational. It is
Yep.
what you should build. If you can build your reputation as a leader on psychological safety, you are many steps ahead.
Yes, because it is something that is not as common as it needs to be, but is one of those defining principles. And again, if you want to learn more about psychological safety, we have we've done some past episodes on, and I'll make sure that those two are in the show
Mhm.
notes. But you're right. If that's the one takeaway, that be able to work on providing that to you, to your cohort, to your coworkers, your peers, and those that report to you, that's going to go a long way. But one of the things that I think is always really important for us to always state from the very beginning is that um, a good leader, a good executive, a good director, whatever it is, they need to have both leadership skills
Mhm.
and management skills. And too often, people don't realize that those are two completely separate yet complementary skill sets. I mean, we've talked about this in a number of past episodes, but I mean, just to kind of give it kind of a quick summary, leadership skills are often about your humanistic qualities. They're about your personality, your temperament, your patience, your compassion. Again, they're about the qualities, the human qualities that kind of you bring
Mhm.
to the work.
And how you approach people.
Yeah, exactly. And often how you communicate and all those other kind of things, how
Yep.
you interact with people, very much so. Management skills are about how you handle tasks and deadlines and delegate and provide expectations and make sure that you're having difficult situations with
Mhm.
professionally, and that you're adhering to protocols and standard operating procedures and time management, all those kinds of things. It's how the work gets done.
Yeah.
And what's a shame is when people don't realize that those two things are separate, and they kind of think if I'm either a great person or a great, great at like task management, then I just need to be one of those things and the rest doesn't matter. But no, it matters so much. And we've seen what happens when you have one, not the other. I think everyone listening is seeing what happens when you have neither. But we also know the power and the the world that is created when you have someone that is very good at both.
Yeah. Yeah, management skills, the distinction is really interesting because if you look at the popular arguments or framing of what it means to be an effective leader, we tend to focus on the individual, the individual leader and the qualities that they need to have in order to lead others. And not to undervalue that because it is incredibly important. But if you are able to motivate people, if you are able to communicate effectively, if you are able to manage conflict and multiple amongst a team, if you're able to rally people around a central vision, if you're able to lead with integrity and respect, that is amazing. But if you
Mhm.
can combine that with the ability to address, have the hard conversations, address issues before they become problems, be able to effectively manage performance among your team without falling into the trap of being very authoritarian and focusing more on the stick than the carrot, right? If you can combine effective management principles with being an effective leader, it is incredibly powerful. It's not easy to do,
No.
but they are skills that can be taught, they
Yes.
can be learned, and they can be practiced. And you need to put them into practice in order to master them.
Yeah, because I mean, I got a lot of people I think listening have experiences having a really good manager that delegates, is clear, direct,
Mhm.
is organized, is structured, make sure that stuff gets done, but is not maybe, so again, management skills, but is maybe not compassionate, emotionally intelligent, thoughtful, intentional, consistent,
Yeah.
right? And I think that a lot of us have had a manager like that. But what is actually more disheartening, I know for me, is when I see somebody who is emotionally intelligent, thoughtful, caring, consistent, compassionate, but doesn't necessarily have, so again, leadership skills,
Yeah.
but doesn't have the management skills to follow through on stuff, to stay organized, to stay on top of their tasks, to delegate effectively, to
Yeah.
deal with performance issues and be consistent with their team and make sure stuff gets done, and they drown.
Hmm.
And when people say, I really like and respect my boss, but stuff's not getting done, things are getting dropped, stuff is getting missed, and it is affecting all of us, there's almost like a guilt that the employees feel for really respecting and loving
Yeah.
this
Because you've
person.
got a good leader is respected, right?
Yeah.
They're somebody who you want to work with because
Mhm.
they make you feel valued,
Yeah.
because they are engaging, they listen to you, they have the emotional intelligence to be able to regulate their own emotions. Because
Yeah.
holy cow, we've seen what happens when that's not the case. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's these wonderful people, wonderful leaders who are just a hot mess in the workplace, right? Stuff
Yeah.
gets dropped. They avoid confrontation because they want to be everybody's friend, right?
Mhm.
They end up shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah. And what's tough is that people end up not almost like when they respect the person so much, they don't voice the concerns to have the problems change because they don't want to feel like because they feel like they're doing something wrong or they're
They like them, so they don't want to be mean,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. They don't want to escalate the situation because they don't want to hurt the other person's feelings or feel like they're betraying that person and their respect for them. It's the
Yeah.
idea of I respect this person, but I need X, Y, and Z to do my job is a weird place to be because if you hate your boss, then it's a little bit easier to kind of knock stuff up a chain and document stuff and like that. But when you really like respect them because they're a great leader, but they're not a good manager, it's a weird like duality, like the cognitive dissonance that happens when you feel that pressure of I like them, but I need them to be different. I don't know how to address that without hurting their feelings.
Well, and yes. And what's incredibly frustrating is if organize when an organization invests in leadership development, they
Hmm.
tend to invest in the leadership skill piece, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. Like
No.
you said, we have some amazing leadership coaches that we work very closely with. And honestly, if you're looking for leadership coaching in your organization, drop us a line. We'd be happy to connect you with some of the people that we work with because they are fantastic.
Hmm.
But it's also one element to it. Like
Yeah.
my point on this before I always get distracted is that when an organization invests in leadership development, they focus on one component. And rarely do we see organizations investing in developing effective managers, right? Even management, quote unquote, management training, when it exists, still tends to focus on the leadership qualities, right? The management skills and leadership skills are distinct. We need to recognize that. We need to treat them as distinct skills, and we need to develop both.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that yeah, so I think we covered that again. If anyone, and we also have a short video on our YouTube channel where we talk about the difference between those in in a really consumable way that
Yeah, maybe
I'll
drop that in the
yeah, I
show notes.
will. But I want to move on a little bit and talk about the role of confidence
Hmm.
in being both a good leader and a good manager.
Yeah.
So yeah, this kind of comes up to us all the time because we kind of say that, there really is like three major, like, well, we call them the three deaths of the modern leader that kind of are like pervasive when there's a problem with a leader and their ability to lead and manage their team.
Hmm.
And where these deaths really do kind of come from is a lack of confidence in their ability to lead and to manage. And that can come from all kinds of reasons. Maybe they were promoted for the wrong reason. Maybe they just, felt like they weren't prepared. Maybe they weren't trained or prepared, or, there's all kinds of stuff. But regardless, there is like predictable problems that come up when there's a lack of confidence in the leader. And sometimes again, and we've talked about this a little bit too. We talk about the technical founder paradox when
Hmm. Yep.
the skills you as a founder or as a longtime manager that's going to help grow an organization to a point that it's gotten large enough that now you're out of the air, you're not using the skills that got you to where the organization is today, and you're gonna have to have different skills, usually leadership and management skills. And now, excuse me, and now that you're in this role, you're not prepared for the realities of this role,
Yeah.
so you end up falling into one of these three deaths.
And as a leader, your job is no longer to actually do the work of the frontline staff, right? If we look at why people tend to get promoted, it tends to be because they've shown success in a previous role. So we want to reward them, we promote them. They show success in that role, we promote them. We show success in that role, we promote them. Eventually, we promote them into a position where they no longer have the skills that made them so successful early on, which is what you were talking about.
Mhm.
The other piece is just long, you know, bum and seat for 15 years, so let's promote them, which is a less effective strategy.
Yeah.
But one of the things in terms of confidence that is really effective and that I um, had was fortunate enough to learn early on in my career when I started getting involved in leadership roles is that you don't actually have to have every answer to every question immediately.
Yeah.
So it's a perfectly acceptable response to say, you know what, that's a great question. I'm gonna have to get back to you on it.
Yeah.
Having the confidence to be able to admit that you don't know everything is
Mhm.
a powerful leadership tool. Having the confidence to be able to um, support those who are responsible for actually doing the work. Your job as a leader is to empower others. And
Mhm.
it's a different mindset that you really need to shift out of being responsible for doing the work to being responsible for the people who are doing the work.
No, and that's a really good point. Yeah, and I think we'll get into that in a little more detail when we can talk about kind of some models and some concepts that can help people manage the difficult situations that they walk into as leaders. But before we get to
Sure.
that, I do want to just touch a little bit more on confidence and maybe even outline the three deaths that I mentioned,
Okay.
because these are things that are again like they're predictable, they're pervasive, and I think we can all, looking back on leadership roles that either we've reported to or maybe even that we've had in ourselves, if you want to be
I
perfectly
mean, we
honest.
are all guilty of these at different times, right? Nobody's
Absolutely.
infallible.
No, exactly.
Also, another important lesson to learn.
Fair. But yeah, so just kind of give a kind of a quick highlight of the three deaths. So the first of the three deaths is what we call self-sabotage. Now, self-sabotage is what happens when you're prioritizing your short-term comfort over your long-term success.
Hmm.
And what this can actually look like is kind of going back to some of the tenets we talked about with the management skills. Like if you're not having the hard conversations, if you're not taking the time to make sure that you're properly organized, if you're procrastinating on dealing with things that are difficult, or you're, not really keeping an eye on the structures and the systems that are required to effectively perform your role. This is what self-sabotage looks like, right? You're sabotaging your ability to deliver the long-term success in order to kind of gather short-term comfort or avoid short-term discomfort.
And this is not an intentional thing. Like
No, very
this
much
is
so.
not something that people sit down and say, "I'm going to self-sabotage myself today." It it happens naturally
Yep.
when we are in our comfort zone and
Mhm.
when we are hesitant or refuse to push ourselves beyond our comfort zone.
Yep.
It happens very frequently in what we talked about in terms of why people get promoted, right?
Mhm.
When somebody is not confident in the skills required to do the job effectively, they tend to revert back on the skills that have been made them successful in the past.
Mhm.
You have to push yourself out of your comfort zone if you're going to learn something new.
Right.
And that's where self-sabotage really tends to live is fear of being uncomfortable or just prioritizing my own satisfaction, my own happiness, my own contentment over what's actually required to do this job well.
Right. Yeah. So it's one of those things where, again, it's like you say, it's something that someone who's self-sabotaging themselves, well, yeah, self-sabotaging.
Self-sabotaging others isn't possible. So,
Right. So
yeah.
someone that's self-sabotaging is not realize that's what they're doing. They're again, it often happens gradually and
Mhm.
organically, but it's the idea like stuff gets dropped, stuff gets left, stuff gets not isn't dealt with. And that's when it really, really builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And that's when people get into trouble. So let's move on to the next one, which is self-preservation.
Mhm.
This is what happens when there's, again, a lack of confidence in the leader's ability to almost like whether do all aspects of the job or kind of sustain the job, you know, with their own merit. So they often will. So this can look like a few different things. It can look like they end up, being more like, more authoritarian or being more kind of like blaming other people
That's
for
the
any kind
one.
of mistake or misstep that they take on. It can look like they don't feel confident in their role or clear about what their role is. So they start to like stir conflict amongst those that report to them, so they have a position where they have to kind of be the go-between amongst these warring factions and giving themselves purpose and giving themselves kind of clarity. Or it can look like someone that just says yes to everything and doesn't actually want to say no or have a hard conversation because they just want everyone to like them and they want it to be easy. So they don't realize what's happening when they just keep saying yes, 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 and they commit their teams to unrealistic timelines,
Yep.
or they just or yeah, or sometimes it's just a matter of lack of yeah, it can be lack of action because of those types of things too. So there's lots of ways that we can do to preserve ourselves, but it comes from a lack of confidence in their ability to actually just lead and be bold and do things that need to be done.
Yeah, some of them are unintentional, like the yes, 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 yes,
Mhm.
a desire to show that you are agreeable and just like
Please others too, yeah.
to please others. That's one aspect. The piece that, and I can understand and have far more patience for that than the other side of it, which is, have you ever had a manager or a leader throw you under the bus?
Yeah.
Take credit for your work, right?
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
when somebody puts as a leader, your job, again, we said it before, your job is no longer to do necessarily do the frontline work. Your responsibility is to those who do the frontline work. You are responsible for their work, yes, but you are responsible to them as well.
Right.
And it is the hallmark of, in my opinion, a terrible leader to take advantage of that, to blame others for
Mhm.
mistakes, even it, or to take credit for their work.
Right.
And it's part of the whole self-preservation piece. And if you find yourself in that trap, I'm going to encourage you to do some self-reflection
Yeah.
because it will kill your integrity as a leader. It will kill the any opportunity you have to build or foster psychological safety in your team, which, as we said at the beginning, if you can get that point right,
Mhm.
oh boys, you are well on your way.
Right.
And that aspect of self-sabotage, of throwing others on the bus or taking credit for their work, will absolutely destroy your credibility.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the third of the three deaths is your favorite, James, which is micromanagement.
Oh yeah, loving it.
But I mean, micromanagement comes from, again, a lack of confidence in their ability to lead and manage others, to delegate, to provide guidance, to, again, have the qualities required to manage performance effectively within a team. Usually, not always, but usually the reason for that lack of confidence is like what you said it before. They got promoted
Hmm.
into a position that the skills that they're confident in are no longer relevant or are not used as often. So they are more confident in their work. So they manage they try to manage the work rather than manage the people responsible for the work.
Yes. That's a good way of framing it. They're so focused on, I know how to do this job because I did this job successfully, and I was so successful in it that I was promoted,
Hmm.
right? So why wouldn't I continue to use those skills? But that's not your responsibility anymore, right?
Right.
They end up getting in the weeds, and
Mhm.
it causes so many problems.
Yeah.
Being many years removed from the situation, I can look back on it with a little bit more grace at this point, and recognize when I have experienced this from leaders that I've worked with. It really has been really well-intentioned people who were successful in the past and who did want me to be successful in my role as well,
Mhm.
but didn't provide me with the freedom to do the job the way that I needed it to be done, and focused on managing every aspect of what I did, when I did it, how I did it. Micromanagement is just, it's a killer of productivity, it's a killer of morale, it's
Mhm.
a killer of credibility.
Yeah. And you're right. 100%. And the reason why we are, doing micromanagement and self-sabotage and self-preservation really does stem back to a lack of confidence. So the question becomes, how do I have confidence to avoid those three things,
Hmm.
right? So we kind of say confidence comes in two different situations. It comes from you need confidence in familiar situations and confidence in unfamiliar situations. Familiar situations, that's easy to have confidence in. I've done this before. I know what works. I can do it again. And usually that's not where we see these three deaths existing.
No.
Where we typically see these three deaths existing is when requiring to have confidence in unfamiliar situations and we don't know how to handle them, so we don't handle them well.
Hmm.
So one of the things that we often advise people is with have a bit of a structure or a plan or a framework or some concepts or tools or reminders to give you that structure you need in unfamiliar situations so you can handle them with confidence. And
Yeah.
that brings us to our concept we've talked about in a few different podcasts, but our concept of integrity leadership.
Yeah.
And integrity leadership is really just that. It's a framework. It's a concept. It's a structure. It's a bit of like a tools and reminders and systems and processes to help you handle unfamiliar situations.
Yeah, it's not a leadership style. Like you can jump on Google and find 47 different varieties of leadership styles, and a lot of them are fantastic.
Hmm.
This is, I mean, this kind of speaks to our natural tendencies of, we build frameworks, we build tools, we build systems.
Hmm.
So when we're in an unfamiliar situation, having something that we may not be confident in the unfamiliar situation, but we're confident in the system that we've built to be able to filter decisions through, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
having a framework that you can use as a decision-making guide so that and it's not to say that you'll never make mistakes by using a system or a framework, but it's being able to justify your decisions. It's being consistent in how you make decisions. Because,
Right.
man, psychological safety, yes, number one, absolutely. But consistency,
Hmm.
that's a close second. And
Absolutely.
just having, if you can't have confidence in the situation, knowing that you can have confidence in the framework can make all the difference in the world when you are facing unfamiliar situations.
Yeah, because part of it is, and again, like anyone that's been in a leadership role has been in a situation where they go, well, crap, how the hell am I going to handle this? And
Yeah.
that's often when we're like, well, I could micromanage, I could procrastinate and sabotage, or I could throw someone else under the bus. These would be my only three options. Well, no, they're not. You can have a bit of again, a system or a framework or a guide to kind of help you. Okay, I know I've got I'm sure there's a way that I can handle this built on this framework. So what the framework is, I'll give you a very high level, and then we'll talk about some examples of what that can look like. But the framework itself has five domains. So the first domain is reliable respect. That's a concept of regardless of how someone is coming at you, of the situation that you're in, you are always reliably respectful and you're consistent in your approach. That people always know that, when they speak with you, that you're coming from a place of compassion and respect and you try and manage your temper and your emotions. So high emotional intelligence is big to make this one
Mhm.
work. But the idea of you just know, regardless of how they're coming at you, you're going to handle it in this one
You
way.
can't control other people's reactions, responses, or emotions. You can
Mm,
only control yourself. And
right.
that's where reliable respect. And if you are doing this consistently over time, it does actually mitigate a lot of problems. Because even if people are coming in hot, if you are calm and you
Mm,
are respectful, it diffuses situations. It's not going to fix everything, but
no.
it's really hard to remain angry at somebody who's just calm and pleasant and respectful.
Right, exactly. And you just know that, okay, should I escalate? Should I react? You're like, no, I'm just going to remind myself, reliable respect.
Hmm.
Stay calm, stay respectful, and work through it that way. And again, very helpful especially in like stressful crisis situations. Very, very helpful. The next one is moral courage, and this is a really powerful one. It's the idea of having the courage to do what's right, not necessarily do what's easy.
This is kind of the opposite of self-sabotage, really,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like this is, yeah. I'm sure we can all think of examples of situations where we've taken the easy road, even when we've known it's not been the best one. I mean, again, we all fall into these traps, but it's if we can keep in front of mind knowing that, like, as a leader, if people know that you will do what's right and not necessarily just what's easy, it builds a tremendous amount of goodwill, and it gives you a lot of leeway in your decision making. If you are again consistent in
Yeah.
doing these things, then people will start to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Right. And one of the things that I often say with the teams that I work with I'll use the same expression over and over and over again. As I say, well, you know, which of these decisions, which of these options that we have to choose, are we most comfortable defending in front of a microphone in the court of public opinion?
Yeah, yeah,
So, like having that idea, that expression in your head when you're looking at a tough situation gives a sense of clarity where there are a lot of options on the table. Do the right thing, do the wrong thing, do the easy thing, do the fast thing, you know. But I mean, having a concept like that, what am I comfortable defending? Even the way that you kind of write emails can be, I'm going to write an email that it could be, I'd be confident if it was read out loud in a courtroom.
hmm,
Just those types of little reminders can be part of moral courage to know that you should be doing what is right, you should be doing what is clear, you should be doing what you can defend, and there's a sense of comfort in that of okay, regardless of how weird the situation is, I'm going to do what's morally right, not what's expediently easy.
yeah.
Is something that gives you again a lot more clear focus on what you can do or what you should do in a situation that you may be unfamiliar with.
Yeah. And it really is a way of showing and acting with integrity, right? We
Yeah,
call this
absolutely.
framework integrity leadership. And
Mm.
while all of these things have a direct correlation or a direct impact on integrity, I think moral courage is probably the one that is most closely tied to what we think of when we think of a leader who leads with integrity.
Absolutely. So the third one is honest acknowledgement. Now, this is kind of going back to the idea of being kind of open and transparent and honest and acknowledging stuff that you do know, stuff that you don't know, and acknowledging the efforts of others. So one of the things that you said earlier on, James, that you don't need to have the answer to every question, that the phrase, let me get back to you on that,
Hmm.
it can be a very powerful statement to use as a leader. That's part of honest acknowledgement. Again, acknowledging that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, that you don't have to constantly have every answer to every question on the tip of your tongue, that you just might need a minute. Or, but like acknowledging the reality of the situation and being clear about that is, again, very powerful. But also just the fact that, not taking credit for other people's work for not trying to spin a situation so you
Yeah.
look good. It's acknowledging kind of the cold hard reality of it and not rounding up when you don't need to,
Yeah.
keeping as clear and as on the path of what is factual as you can part of it is that it actually makes things really easy. You don't have to worry about trying to remember what story you told this person, that person, this person, that person. It's you just told the truth. And you're acknowledging the situations that you're in, acknowledging what you do know and what you don't know.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, we talk about a lot of aspects of this through the podcast and through different things. Like when we talk about recognition, and we talk about it being timely, authentic, and appreciable. Honest acknowledgement, if you can honestly acknowledge the efforts and the successes of others in a timely, appreciable, and authentic way, that's how you show recognition and build rapport with people. Like
Yeah.
honest acknowledgement is such a great system for how we engage with others,
Mhm.
right? It is about us in as individuals, as leaders, and how we act, but it has a big influence on our relationships and how we build professional relationships.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that it's also part of honest acknowledgement is how we manage expectations. With
Yes.
clear, transparent communications, letting people know what's expected of them, not expecting them to read our minds. It's about making sure that we're clear in how we set and manage expectations of others, so they kind of know what we are looking for, and we're acknowledging all of our wants and all of our needs as leaders for them. It's out there on the table and transparent.
Yeah. And also honestly acknowledging our own mistakes. Because
Hmm.
we kind of one of the, I will talk about it again, but one of the things that you really need to know as a leader is that nobody is infallible. We all make mistakes, and that's the reality of being human, right?
Hmm.
If we can acknowledge when we as a leader made a mistake, it gives permission to others to to open up and admit when they've made mistakes. It's a big component of building psychological safety, and
Yeah.
leaders set the tone. They
Hmm.
set the example for how others are supposed to behave or what acceptable behavior looks like. And if you can set that tone in an honest acknowledgement of your own mistakes, and it will make a big impact on your team in terms of, letting them know that mistakes aren't obviously sought after.
Right.
No, we don't want to make mistakes, but it's going to happen. So let's figure out how can we not make the same mistake twice? How can we move past this in
Hmm.
a productive manner?
Right. Absolutely. So the fourth one is trustworthy influence. And this is largely about showing regard and respect for the authority, the influence, the power that you've been given in your leadership role, and using it in a way that others can trust you, that others can understand, that others believe that you get where they're coming from, that you're building a sense of rapport and almost like consistency in how you deal with people so that you're not misusing the authority that you've been provided. And so again, we say this is about how you wield that authority, how you
Yeah.
wield that position that you're in, and what you do with it. And you want to be trying to, whatever decision that you make is about building bridges and building trust and building connections, and not in a role for the power, for the authority. You're using it as a tool for accomplishment, for connection, for collaboration. And that's really kind of what the tenets of trustworthy influence is.
Yeah, it really comes down to, like, there's a popular leadership style around servant leadership, right?
Right.
It recognizing that leadership in essence is a role that serves others,
Yeah.
right? As a leader, your responsibility, we've said it several times, your responsibility is no longer to do the work itself. It's to support those, serve those who are doing the work,
Right.
right? It
Yeah.
is a mindset shift for
Hmm.
many people, but it's a powerful one. And
Yeah.
if people recognize that you wield influence reliably with and trust in a way that is consistent, and it just, again, these are all really important elements to building your leadership capabilities.
Yeah, and like again, going back to what we talked before about micromanagement, is that with trustworthy influence, you're not in the weeds, you're the
Mhm.
snowplow. You're the
Yeah,
one removing barriers, and you're using your power and your authority to clear the way for those doing the work to do the work better, faster, with
yeah,
less headaches. And that's really what, and that's what an effective use of influence actually is.
yeah,
All right, so the last one is empowering others. And this is really kind of going back to that idea again of your job, your success in your leadership role is about the success of those who report to you, the way that they deliver on the outcomes, whether they are meeting their expectations. That is how you are being measured for success. How well you're keeping people, how well the performing they are, how, conflicts are managed, the culture of the environment that you've kind of crafted or been the architect of. That is what success really looks like for you, and that should be your focus, is making that as empowering and effective as possible.
And on the empowering others piece, one thing that I think is really important in this is as you become more comfortable with a framework like this, feel free to like use this framework if it works for you or modify it for your own. But
Mm.
keep in mind the those five key components that we talked about with empowering others. As a leader, you also have a responsibility to develop the next leader,
Right.
right? This is a way to do that. It is your responsibility to make sure that people have what they need to be successful, to empower them to make decisions using their professional judgment, to empower them to grow within your company, to empower them to make sure that they can do what they need to do in a way that maintains the integrity of the organization. Your job is to support other people. You need to empower them to do their job and do
Mhm.
it effectively.
Absolutely. Because ultimately, that's how organizations can grow and scale, is by having employees that are empowered to deliver on the performance
Yeah.
that the organization needs, and they're led by someone that is, able to give them that ability to grow and to scale and to excel. And that's how we get there, right? So so again, those five domains of integrated leadership can be really powerful. And what do I do in this situation? Well, if I remind myself that there's an answer within those five, it gives me something to build confidence in, so I know that I can handle an unfamiliar situation. And the more I do it, the better it becomes. The more they become familiar situations, the more natural confidence I develop.
Hmm.
All right, so I think I'll move into a bit of a summary. Anything else you want to add?
No, I was thinking about kind of some of the quick tips or pieces, but I think we hit on some of those kind of through the explanation. Things like not having to have every answer to every question,
Right.
right? Recognizing that nobody is infallible and that you're not expected to be infallible either. And
Mhm.
providing that expectation to others. These are really, I mean, they're powerful statements, but they're
Mhm.
also simple statements that if you can grab onto, can
Yeah.
make a big difference.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so the question was, what do I need to know to be an effective leader? Well, we said largely you're going to want to be able to, one, build psychological safety within the work that you do. That's just something that is kind of a fundamental tenet
Hmm.
to effective leadership. But also, you're going to want to know the difference between leadership skills and management skills. Leadership skills are about who you are as a person. Management skills are about how you delegate and are responsible for tasks and outcomes. Marrying the two with effective and strong competency is what makes a good leader, executive, manager. So you want to understand that where a lot of the problems come from is about confidence and whether or not we have confidence in our ability to lead in familiar situations and unfamiliar situations. And when we don't have the confidence, we fall into traps like self-sabotage, self-preservation, and micromanagement. But to avoid those situations by being able to navigate unfamiliar situations, having a framework like integrity leadership can be a very helpful way to navigate that. When we are reliably respectful to people, we know how people know what is coming from us every time, so they can come to us with more confidence. When we have moral courage, we know how to handle difficult situations and not sacrifice what's right for what's easy. When we use honest acknowledgement, we are able to express ourselves in a way that people believe and trust and can build a connection with. When we use trustworthy influence, we're able to use the power that we've been provided in a way that will help others and will help, again, build success in our work as well as theirs. And we empower others, we give them the tools that they need to deliver, and we move into a way that they can be independent, and use professional judgment and autonomy, which will help the organization grow and scale. These are all the things that will help us become more effective in the way that we lead. And these are really valuable tips and tools that anyone can use, whether you're in a leadership role today or you're building towards one in the future.
Yeah.
All right. So that about is it for us. For a full archive of the podcast and access to the video version hosted on our YouTube channel, visit roman3.ca/podcast. Thanks for joining us.
For more information on topics like these, don't forget to visit us at roman3.ca. Side effects of this podcast may include improved retention, high productivity, increased market share, employees breaking out in spontaneous dance, dry mouth, aversion to the sound of James's voice, desire to find a better podcast.